Good evening to everybody. I'm seeing, yes, sir. I can't hear you.
Now,
Yes.
can I? Yeah,
Yes, I can.
hello, ma'am. Yeah. I'm Ranjit Sardar, working as a manager HR in MNC in Pune.
Okay.
Yeah. And I started this course, which is HR for non-HR managers. I'm into HR since last 20 years.
Okay.
This course which you have designed has got uh, nuances which are into HR, right from recruitment uh, till the exit. Now, what we are into the field work.
Okay.
My question is like you're giving the field work assignments,
Yes.
and the field work assignments are good enough to understand the HR processes. My I want to ask whether there will be some session which will be related to manufacturing industries where there are issues related to HR. This kind of session will be a lot of help for the manufacturing industries.
Okay.
So,
So,
yeah,
are you requesting that I call an HR manager who is working within manufacturing industry, or you refer to experts like Dr. Dharmang Bakshi? Dr. Bakshi has been an additional commissioner of labor, and he has mediated and he has helped people implement the laws. So today's session, I have requested him to focus mainly on compensation and employee benefit and discipline related issues. But as our course progresses, there will be more issues. For example, Factories Act, Shops and Establishment Act, Contract Labor Act, and several more. So if you like, on the need basis, I'm going to request him to engage a second session. That is one arrangement we have already made. And if you want to speak to somebody who has been in a manufacturing setup in a company which has Six Sigma level performance and is a highly respected exporter, I can request an HR manager. Like, I often take my students for industrial visit over there. You can look them up, Harsha Electricals, and if the manager agrees, I can arrange for an interview with them. You might have seen the first recorded in-studio interview, second interview with Deven Patel. Deven Patel is the VP HR at Bosch Rexroth, which is also a manufacturer.
yeah, I have not seen that yet. I want to see that the interview.
Okay.
So, yeah, yes, ma'am.
So we can go along similar line.
Yeah.
From the course, from your experience, and from whatever other material you have referred to, if you have any questions, we can compile the questions, and on the basis of the curated questions, we can plan for one more session.
Yeah. The other question is like I'm working in an industry where uh, the turnover is around 100 crores. Maybe many of them must be working in a small industries. It's not a small industry; it's a medium level industry where the HR aspect or the HR processes like performance management or the succession planning, as the number, the sizes is less for employees. Like, less employees are there, less staff is there. So this kind of HR processes are not like implemented in such kind of industries. I'm working with the MNC, but all over the world, the policy is not taken so much seriously. It's just admin kind of job. where it is more involved admin related to personal job. So I am actually like, if the course adds the performance appraisal system in a practical ways, what we have to do, what we have to have the forms. Suppose this kind of practical theory or practical, sorry, practical forms are shown into the courses, then we can have those kind of implementation, the policies in this kind of companies.
Um, I think that people will have some issues in arranging sharing and display of the forms in actual use.
Yeah.
Also, people who are consultants, they might be bound by non-disclosure agreements. But
Yeah, correct.
I have noted your request, and we will see the best thing that we can do. I think in performance management related session, we have already outlined the process and way to go. Anyway, I see that Dr. Dharmang Bakshi is here. He is our expert of today. You have read his brief profile. Dr. Bakshi is a very highly respected expert on labor laws and industrial relations. His expertise is extremely relevant to people like us because he has been on the side of implementation of the laws. So he, from the position where he is enjoying the best vantage point, where he has a perspective on what the government desires and what the government intends. At the same time, he also has a very good view of other stakeholders, for example, industry, uh, academic institutions like us, practicing managers who are responsible for maintaining harmonious industrial relations, and more. But because we have very short time available today, I would straight away jump to Dr. Dharmang Bakshi. Dr. Bakshi, welcome again. Thank you very much for accepting this invitation. And I would like you to take over the session now. I have shared with you the questions, so you can pick and choose any order in which you would like to take those questions. Over to you, Dr. Bakshi.
Thank you, Margi Madam, and thanks for inviting me for this session. I hope I am audible.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Now, with reference to the questions which were shoot to me, I could find only two baskets of question. Mainly one is the payment of compensation during pandemics and
Yes.
how labor laws can help the situation.
Yes.
And number two was mainly on what will be the perspective, I mean, the future challenges and how labor laws will take the shape
Yes, sir.
to combat the challenges which has emerged due to pandemics and many other reasons.
Yes, sir.
Now, quickly addressing the first set of questions regarding compensation.
Yes, sir.
I'll say that during the lockdown period, and which is yet not fully lifted in certain part of the country, the one notification under the Disaster Management Act was issued by the Government of India that full wages should be paid to the all employees, irrespective to whether they come to the workplace or otherwise.
Yes.
Now that was challenged by the various employer association into the state high courts, and finally the whole issue reached to the highest court of the country. Now there are two situations. One, the apex court has to decide whether the notification under the Disaster Management Act supersedes the existing provision of the Industrial Disputes Act 1947, because ID Act is a specific legislature, and when the constitutional expert would have enacted this act, all thoughts would have been given. Now, the section 25 aim of the Industrial Disputes Act provides for, number one, the situation where the employer is not in a position to give the work. Now, those situation has been listed, number one, either due to natural calamity, or shortage of raw material or the compilation of finished goods or any other situation which is beyond the control of employer. At that time, employer can refuse the employee to come to the workplace. That the term being used is layoff, and the law provides for 50% of wages to be given to employees, and then 50% either side has to waive off, because it's a win-win situation, and because it is a situation beyond the reach of anybody. So in that stipulated situation, that is the provision of the law. However, there is additional provision also in the Industrial Dispute Act, that the industrial establishment registered under the provisions of the Factories Act 1948 and employing 100 or more employees in last preceding 12 months on average basis, the prior permission of the appropriate government needs to be taken before the law. This is the position of the law. Now quickly addressing to the question which was put before, the answer is very simple. 50% one has to waive. It's the position because employer never declined that worker should not come. It was the situation which has compelled the policy makers and the industrialists to obey the order in interest of public at large, and that was the situation. So the law position well stands here. However, just updating the thing what Apex Court has said when the whole matter reached there through various industrial employer association and so on, they have said that yes, the notification under Disaster Management Act to give the full wages does not stand, and they directed government not to take any rigorous step for non-payment of full wages. Number two, they said that it is the call of the employer and employee to sit together, understand each other position and limitation, and then they can resolve that what payment should be made in this kind of situation. And number three, court has said that in case of conciliation which is not possible between employer and employee, they directed the state labor department, whatsoever the state may be, to intervene and help the proceeding. And with this direction, matter is posted in the last week of this September 2020, as nothing has been finally ruled out. But this was an interim direction that no rigorous step to be taken against the employer who have not paid full wages. And employer and employee should sit together and decide. And then third, in case of failure of such conciliation, the labor department should step in to address the issue. That's with the first basket of questions. And the second thing, yes, regarding challenges before the policymaker, how to deal with the current scenario as economy has fully derailed, and how to promote the industry so that employment is generated and economy is rolled back to nearly the pre-pandemic situation. Frankly speaking, in all, if you look to the 2 volumes of industrial law, as many as 70 labor laws are there. And it's a need of the day to revisit those labor laws, because honestly, more than half have lost the relevancy with the passage of time. During Gujarat is heading for the 9th Vibrant Summit in January 2021, and during all Vibrant Summit, we as a labor department faced the one question, that there is a too much protection in Indian labor laws, and the foreign direct investment prefers to refrain that this much protection, the cost of labor to the company and the subsequent litigation if he is removed from the job is too expensive, and this too much protection needs to be diluted. I mean, there's a constant demand from the employers, be it Indian origin or foreign direct investor or whoever. So that is all across the country. And if I tell about how labor laws are reformed quickly in a 1 or 2 lines, that there is a constitutional forum under Ministry of Labour, Government of India, which deals with the any suggestions that what labor laws are need of the day and how needs to be amended, called Indian Labour Conference, and which is phenomenally inaugurated by Honorable Prime Minister. Always it is also termed as the Workers' Parliament, where such issues are played, and it's a tripartite forum that employer, employee, government is always a static. So they work on it and they look forward what changes to be made. Now quickly, what is happening nowadays, as today print media has said, that the wage code has seen light of the day. Government of India has framed the rules. There are 4 different labor laws have been merged. In all, 44 labor laws have been put under one basket, of which one wage code has seen light of the day. Government of India has framed the rules. State is also on line of the same, will finalize the rule within a few weeks. And remaining 3 codes, that is IR code, which takes care of 3 different existing labor codes, that is Trade Union Act, Industrial Employment Standing Order Act, and Industrial Dispute Act, will be merged, and IR code will see light of the day. Then 11 labor laws which deal with the social security of the employee class will be merged and put under basket of social security code. And the 4th code is occupational safety and health code, also has a 13 different labor laws, which will put under that basket, and which is cleared by cabinet now. This all the 3 laws will place before the parliament in monsoon session, and let us see what happens.
Sir,
So that is all about the updates. Yes, please.
I would draw your attention to the last part of the first question, where Sunil Kumar Gowda has related his situation, where his company had a policy that if you had a seniority of 10 years, then they would qualify for employer contribution of 50%. So I assume he refers to the Provident Fund, Employee Provident Fund. Now he had the seniority of 9 years and slightly more than 10 months. So he was inches away from 10 years seniority, and because of COVID, he was laid off. And in his case, of course, he got back his contribution, but the employer contribution was withheld. So does he have any way out or any recourse in this kind of situation, or the employer always has the upper hand? And first of all, my question is somebody who doesn't really understand the laws very well. My question is that can the employer really have this kind of policy where they say that they will pay their share only if an employee has more than 10 years of seniority?
No, the submission itself, any employer who says this is bad in law. Actually, it is a statutory obligation. Yes. It has nothing to do with the number of years one who puts into the services.
Yes.
The law is attracted to any organization employing 20 or more employees. Yes. That is the Employee Provident Fund Act 1952 provides for.
Right.
And right from the first day, I mean the first month of individual service in industry, I repeat, employing 20 or more employees, is contribution, and the proportionate contribution starts. That is the legislative framework, and if somebody is not getting, it has nothing to do with the seniority, number one.
Correct.
So it is bad in law. Whoever does it, so one needs to complain to the Regional Provident Fund Commissioner about their organization, that this is what has been done, and kindly remedy the situation. So rest will, the organization will take care of it. So that is one.
Of labor, or he has to go to Provident Fund office?
It is a EPF. See, there are two. I'll let you know. I'll clarify 2 things. The Employee State Insurance Act and the EPFO, that is the Employee Provident Fund Act, is implemented by the machinery of the Government of India. State has no role.
Okay.
Correct. There is no state implementing machinery for it. It is only exclusively implemented by Government of India, like foreign tax, ASIC building, ASIC, that is ESIC.
Yes, I see.
And across the Gandhi Bridge, there is one EPFO building, Employee Provident Fund Organization.
Correct.
Right? Yeah, that's what it is.
All right. So he has to
And-
just go there and make his complaint, and
Yeah,
what will happen? Okay.
yeah.
I think our
And second thing,
yes, sir.
yeah, second thing, somebody has written that and something 50% is not being paid. I mean, I'm just putting a point. If somebody wants this remaining 50%,
Hmm.
they can raise industrial dispute before the conciliation officer. That
Correct.
whatever deduction was made, that, but it is a kind of form something, a union or assemble in a one roof,
Hmm.
and collectively they should demand the that remaining 50% to be paid before the conciliation officer of the given area, and then matter will go to the labor court, and I don't know, that court will adjudicate the matter on merits
Hmm.
and wait for the outcome of the
So,
issue.
in
Now somebody has asked about the the labor legislation in South Africa and Kenya and something like that.
yes.
Now I will react to it. Somewhere in 2013, in Vibrant, Bernard Makuza, the of course President, Prime Minister from Rwanda,
Hmm.
was the guest of honor.
Hmm.
And at that time, the during all Vibrant, various countries participate. In fact, people have very limited knowledge. Frankly, I don't criticize, but seeing is believing. Being a part of the Vibrant activity in liaison and whatever business to business meeting or business to corporate meeting, etc., etc., or business to government meeting, we have fully understood Vibrant Gujarat is not only, or Vibrant activity maybe across the country, whoever that does, is not restricted only to invite the investment in a given state.
Hmm.
In fact, why I cited this, in Rwanda there were a couple of sick pharmaceutical units, and the entrepreneurs from Gujarat, I can name also the Cadila Group, namely the chairperson Mr. Rajiv Modi, had shown the interest that they would like to take over those sick units. Similarly, Rwanda wanted to make a university like Nirma in Rwanda. So we had a meeting with the chairperson Karsanbhai Patel. So it is bilateral. It is not only those who come and invest in Gujarat, but it's an equal opportunity for the investors of Gujarat to invest abroad. So it is a bilateral kind of vibrancy has been created in this platform. So coming to the point about the gentleman who has asked about the labor laws, yes, it's need to be revisited. There is nothing like industrial friendly structure, and what is happening all over the world. Frankly speaking, that people have been talking about China and so on, but in your China labor laws came in 1996, that too after WTO regulations.
Hmm.
That labor should be, one of the part of it, because dignity of labor, the human rights of labor to be maintained, irrespective of whether the country is communist or democratic or as the case may be. So it has value on the finished products. So if they are paid properly, if they are compensated properly, then it goes on like that. So yes, the laws in the Africa and the adjacent country needs negotiating the constitutional rights of the worker, something like procedural reform, dilution of inspection, harassment from the bureaucratic machinery, and so on. There are a lot of modules being put in practice, how to do away with use of technology, information technology, and so on, to be done in those countries. So that's what I just would like to react about it. Now, going to your suggestion that I need to speak on the compensation, and then you said that I need to speak about the disciplinary action.
Yes, sir.
But then somebody, when I joined, I was just silently listening. Some gentleman who is working in the manufacturing industry, having turnover of 100 crore plus, something like that. I was listening, and you were suggesting that if you need, then you can have another session to
Yes.
Yeah. Now I will quickly address to that. You see, the definition of industry under the Industrial Disputes Act is very wide.
Correct.
There are triplet tests. I would not like to go in teaching the ID Act as of now, but this three tests needs to be complied to term any activity, whether it falls within the ambit of definition of an industry. Answering my question simply without going much into the detail and complexing the situation, any situation you imagine where there is the organized activity between employer and employee, that activity should be to cater the human needs, and third, to with or without motive of profit, falls within the definition of industry. That is very simple. Organized activity with the help of employer and employee. Such activity should be to cater the human needs, and third, with or without motive of profit. So not necessarily that activity should have the motive of profit. Now, if you imagine an activity, start answering these three tests. If it falls yes, it is an industry. Now there is nothing like, manufacturing in activity as a separate labor laws, service industries as a separate labor laws. I tell you, before 10 years or maybe 9 years, in an Indian Institute of Management, 2 days or 3 days workshop was there for the IT professionals, and they had a myth that labor laws are not applicable to call center, knowledge process outsourcing, BPO, and so on. That myth they were carrying, and I was one of the panelists. So I try to explain everything the way in which I said right now, that three texts as per the Bangalore Water Supply Severages Board versus Rajappa case of 1979. It is full and final on 9th September 2020. I don't know what will happen tomorrow, but today it is full and final. So you are all booked under all the labor laws, and you need to comply them in a true spirit. So point is, the gentleman who was asking about the manufacturing unit, there is nothing like manufacturing. Even a grocery shop where one employee called Gumasta in Gujarati or a helper is employed, and if you remove him, he has also right to agitate the issue of reinstatement before the conciliation officer of the given district or in any state. So this much broad, the definition of industry, and there are no separate labor laws for manufacturing or IT sector or service sector or whatever you say. It all takes care of everything, right? That was just I wanted to ask about. Now, with reference to compensation, I would like to have some clarification. Compensation is what type?
Correct.
What type? I mean, see, the employee compensation act you are referring to, Employee State Insurance Act, the bilateral contribution, or compensation during pandemic situation?
I need to clarify that. There are two notions of compensation. One is that when employer engages the employee and employer reach a kind of contract, and under that contract, employee commits to make effort so that the organizational goals can be achieved through those efforts. So first, common sense understanding of the meaning of the term compensation is compensation for efforts. So whatever is the salary or the rewards given to the employee, that is treated as compensation. Second sense in which the word compensation is often used is compensation to some kind of injury or damage that the employee sustains while they are on duty, maybe on the premises or off the premises. So we take care of occupational safety, health, and hazards to those, and we also take care of compensation and what the employees' dues are against under the terms of employment.
Okay. So to begin with, I will react to your first submission of compensation as a part of somebody joins the job and what constitutional rights he or she has under the existing labor laws.
Yes.
So first of all, the Minimum Wages Act that state implements based on the spirit of the Article 43 of the Constitution,
Yes.
that provides for bare minimum. If you recruit a worker in
Yes.
3 different categories, there are 3 categories: unskilled, skilled, and semi-skilled.
Semi-skilled.
The rates are defined by the state government every 5 years. Every state, revises the rates. Minimum 5 years. They can revise in a lesser period also, as the case may be. But then the point is, normally it is revised every 5 years. So employer who recruits any employee must pay minimum wages. That is the first. Is the basic wage minimum, where coupled with the special allowance that every 6 months state government declares based on the dearness index, which is being decided by Labour Bureau Shimla.
Right.
There is a set formula. I would not enter into it, but minimum wage includes basic wage that is decided by the state government and revised every 5 years, whatever prevailing at given point of time, coupled with the special allowance. That constitute the minimum wage. So that is the first right of the employee for 8 hours of work with half an hour recess, and the, of course, constitutional obligation on employer to pay, number one. Now, if such employees work in any organization employing 10 or more workers, then he is entitled for the bonus in accordance with the provisions of the Payment of Bonus Act 1965. I skipped one thing, while talking of minimum wages, if employer takes work from employee for more than 8 hours, he has to pay the double the rate for overtime. Suppose he takes work for 10 hours, then he has to pay for remaining additional 2 hours, he has to pay double the rate. Overtime is always double the rate. So I mean, you whatever minimum wage divided by 8, you will get hourly wage. That in double, twice to that amount he has to pay per hour. So that is his constitutional right and the duty, constitutional obligation on employer. Then I said bonus if the employee works in an organization employing 10 or more workers. Then third is the gratuity. If he works for continuous 5 years, he is entitled for the gratuity. Then 10 or more, then he is also entitled for the employee state insurance share. But here I would like to quickly add that ESIC is not applicable across the state or any state in the country. The ESI where to apply, that is being decided by the Ministry of Labour, Government of India. For an example, in Gujarat, if I say ESI is not across the state, it is only the precondition is the health infrastructure to be provided by the state government, and the state in the districts where we have adequate health infrastructure, ESI corporation in consultation with Ministry of Labour, Government of India decides whether to make ESI applicable in such district or otherwise. So that is one. So where there is ESI applicable, then the third right of the employee is to see that contribution is being deducted from his salary, and the employer also paid matching contribution, that is 3.25 and 0.75 of basic wage of employee, 3.25 from the employer, and that goes to the his ID number where his ESIC account is operational. So 4% contribution in all, 0.75 of employee basic wage and special allowance or DA, 3.25 of basic and DA what he is paying to employee, amount amounting to 4% is deposited in his account, and there are number of benefits employee gets. If the illness is less than 3 months, then he gets the actual expenditure where he got the treatment and loss of wages. I mean, there are these schemes for family members also. I mean, it's too long and would not be possible to take up a call here. But cursory view is this, and where ESIC is not applicable, Employee Compensation Act takes the board, it's applicable automatically. You see, there is no limit of employees being provided into the EC Act 1923. ESIC is applicable on 10 or more employees. Organization must have. It includes shops, educational establishment, contractors, factories, everything. But in the area only which is being declared as ESIC zone by the Government of India. But if those zone has not been declared by ESIC, then Employee Compensation Act takes the charge. It is Employer's Liability Act. There is no element of insurance involved in EC Act. If something goes wrong, then it is entire expenditure is borne by the employer. So what people are doing, as I said, ESIC is an insurance product. Both the parties are contributing 0.75 and 3.25. But in Employee Compensation Act, there is no contribution. It's entirely Employer's Liability Act. So what practice being done on the floor is, we advise all the employers, those who are out of the ambit of ESIC Act, contractors even, and employing whatever employees they are recruiting, to take the EC policy. And after the IRDA guidelines, they are Insurance Regulator Development Authority. The number of private players are there in the market, including government companies like New India, Oriental, and so on. Takes care of EC policy. The very purpose is to safeguard the interest of workers in case of any accidental injury or a death. So that's with reference to the rights of the employee or a compensation which you have been referring to with regarding the employee at the workplace. And last but the least, if some employees are retrenched, I'm just talking about the rights of the employee when you say what is the compensation they are supposed to have. So suppose if you retrench the employees, then you need to pay retrenchment compensation 15 days per completed year of services, 30 days notice or notice pay in lieu thereof. And yes, while retrenching the worker, the first rule is what we call is a LIFO system, that is last in should go first. That is who is the junior most employee in normal situation.
Correct.
In normal situation, if I am not doing well financially and I am forced to retrench as an industrialist, then my methodology should be as per the IDA Act is the junior most should go first and then so on. However, doing so, 15 days retrenchment compensation for completed year of services, 1 month notice or notice pay in lieu thereof. And the last rule which IDA provides for in future, if I need workers again, I need to give preference to these employees to whom I have retrenched.
Correct.
This is the legislative provision of the IDA Act. If somebody wants to religiously follow it, this is what he needs to do. Now, second part you said about some disciplinary action.
Yes, sir.
Probably which you said, yeah. Now, I just I would like to link here that in normal situation, if you retrench somebody, you need to follow these 4 rules which I have said. That last in should go first, retrenchment compensation, 1 month salary, and in future, if you need to give these people opportunity. That is the normal situation. However, there are a number of instances in the industry that workers are not obedient and violate the disciplinary rules, standing orders, if the in-house other regulations and so on. In such cases, disciplinary actions employer can take. However, there is a set procedure mentioned into the Industrial Employment Act, Industrial Employment Standing Order Act 1946. There is a set procedure, and that employer needs to follow before he wants to retrench somebody by way of disciplinary proceeding. Now that procedure is I will quickly spell out that in a sequence of violation that he has, either he was disobedient or he has damaged the property of the employer or finished product, or showing the gross disobedience or something like sabotage in the premises of the factory, etc., etc. Then first a letter that he has done so, which is bad in law and why the disciplinary action should not be taken against you, kind of letter will go. It will followed by the show cause notice. These are the stages.
Sir, this letter is itself not show cause notice?
No, it is, you see, ideologically, I don't dispute what you say, but to finally succeed into the court of law, this is the action law. I know, I used to speak before judicial officer in two ways. There is always, if somebody asks me how many industrial disputes act 1947 are, then normally, question is void ab initio. It is always a one industrial disputes act, but I have a different perception. There are two industrial disputes act. One is the theory, second is the action law. Like, I used to teach there in talking that one teacher, how to swim, he purchased that book and went to the swimming pool. But action part, he never knew that where to stop the breathing, how to move my hands, and so on. The similar spirit I reproduce here. The industrial action part of the Industrial Dispute Act always, when we go to the court of law and defend the art of advocacy, these are the set system which has emerged out, that first you push a letter alleging that you have done so and so. Then if his reply is good enough, then don't enter further channel of communication. You can wind up this. Second is the show cause notice, which is a legal, it is a startup to take the ceremony of throwing him out. It's the first stage, and frankly speaking, whatever normally outcome, it's the floor process, floor attitude which being exercised. So anyway, this was the either side of the issue, but the show cause notice, then explanation, and then communication to be fulfilled that your explanation is not accepted. That paper also should go to him, and then finally the charge sheet. During all stages, to maintain and honor the principle of natural justice, one should give the enough adequate hearing opportunity to the one who is being accused for any misdeed. Having said so and having done that, finally, number of penalty have been prescribed. You may degrade his portfolio, for an example, increments, 1 increment with future effect, 3 increments. You may give him a warning and let him go. And in extreme case, you have to sack him from the job. So I mean, this all here, because it's case to case, there are different kind of punishment being implicated. Mostly, honestly, I have seen that it is only people throw the workers or employee out of the job. Is the commonly being seen on the floor. So that is how it is. Putting a circle full. If employees are thrown this way, they have constitutional right to agitate the issue before the conciliation officer, that inquiry was arbitrarily done, I was not heard properly, and so my retrenchment is bad in law, and etc., etc. Then we as a conciliator has a very limited scope to adjudicate, because there are n number of judgments of the apex court that we are only administrative functionary, we have no right to adjudicate the matter. So we will refer those matters to the labor court for adjudication, and then labor court will decide the etc., etc. So anyway, if we take against any employee. Yeah.
Sir, one more
So
question.
this is all what you said about.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
One more question. Can I ask you?
Please.
Often when we read the text,
Please.
Text of such laws, we read that this law is applicable to whole of India except the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Um, is is that provision now still applicable, or it has been repealed?
No, it's in the process of repeal. But the whole set of legislature which is existing with these changes have placed in the parliament. Now,
Yes.
for since last more than 6-7 months, we are all out of the, routine life due to pandemics, and nobody knows when it will come to the normal. But the point is, yes, it will be repealed. It needs to be repealed. Like for an example, I'll quickly say that initially Gujarat was integrated with Maharashtra, and when we segregated in 1960, number of law which are of state enactment, like we did spoke once about the Bombay Shops and Establishment Act.
Yes.
Then I said the name is changed, that it is Gujarat Shops and Establishment. It entirely repeated in 2016 or 2019. Last year, the whole enactment was repealed. So initially it was Bombay Shops and Establishment Act. Now it is Gujarat Shops, and again it is repealed with the new feathers and colors. And similarly, Industrial Relations Act was also BIR Act. Now it is GIR Act. Anyway, so it will be repealed and it will applicable throughout the country after that 370 and 35A, which has been abolished.
So suppose if I want to ask in the examination that a specific act is applicable to the whole of India except Jammu and Kashmir, would that statement be true or false?
Well, it's a tricky situation because why I say so. The laws are read in the whatever letters puts in. As of now that things have not come. So theoretically you are right, but in practice, since in fact such words figure out into the bare act, it's both the way. The question itself is not bad, but you can't say yes is correct or no is correct, because I have always question that you are right that 370-35 has been abolished, but then the effect has not been given to the legislature. Till then, you can't do that. Normally, I will tell you, Margi, that after enactment of the law, there is always a notification, be it a government of India or government of Gujarat, that from this date, it will come into the force. For an example, I will tell you, and all of us, those who are listening me, must know the latest update. Very recently, President of India is under Article 223 as power he possesses, given an ordinance which is through in the government by way of government of Gujarat, Ministry of Labour and Employment, as through that amendment that provides for any new factory which comes into the force after this ordinance, which has seen light of the day, will get exemption from provisions of the Industrial Disputes Act and the Factories Act 1948 for 1,000 days. Right?
It's major.
That ordinance, that's a major amendment. So point is, in section 36 of the Industrial Dispute Act, there is a provision that the government is empowered to exempt the units, and under the provisions of the Factories Act, section 5 also gives ample power to the government that during stipulated situation they can exempt any factory from the provisions of the Factories Act. Now this ordinance have been signed by the Honorable President on 7th of August 2020. And within a day or so, the notification government will pass that from this day, this ordinance will come into the force.
That is
So from that day onwards, whoever establishes the industry, factory, will have exemption from these two acts.
Disputes Act and Factory.
ID Act and Factories Act. Yes. If you need soft copy, I will WhatsApp you.
Okay.
But the point is that notification is just it is a academic interaction, but notification. My point of telling this was very simple. Reference to your Jammu Kashmir issue, that notification needs to be made that now we extend the applicability of this act to J&K also.
Correct.
You see, it's a procedural law. This is the third segment of law, that procedural law.
Yes, I understand.
That needs to be, that is how it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess we have tackled all the questions.
Yeah.
I will just, our labor laws need, so this question by Deepak Kumar Sirohi raises the issue of ease of doing business. So are our labor laws needing reforms according to new market scenario? Are they in the best shape to handle the future challenges? So I think while we look at the challenges on the globalization and marketplace side, we should also consider the challenges of the workforce where, more and more people are pushed beyond or outside the boundaries of permanent employment. Job security is eroded. More and more people are being employed in a casual manner. So with scenario like this on both the sides, what is your view on how well our labor laws can protect the interest of the weak, or ensure fair working conditions, or protect the rights of employer and employee both?
Well, I will respond this.
Yes, sir. Just
Yeah.
After you give answer, I also see one hand raised. So we will take his question after you answer this.
Okay. Now, my point is, see, law themselves are not bad. Actually, we are a member to International Labour Organization since 1990, and very recently we have completed 100 years. We have signed number of, recommendations and, certified them by amending the law or creating a new law.
Yes.
There are two issues which have been figured out over a period of time. Ease of doing business is a little slippery word. Very honestly, I'm putting my experience and factual views. You can't negotiate the fundamental rights of the employee class under umbrella of ease of doing business.
Yes.
One of the sitting lordship in High Court has said one phrase or statement I am reproducing very academically without naming the lordship. Is it vibrant Gujarat or a violent Gujarat? You see, by putting number of reforms, reform is also a very slippery word. Yes. Reforms for the sake of reforms, are those really reforms? The atmosphere what is aimed to create is to do away with the repeated visits of the government offices, use of information and technology. As much as you can do your work, get away the license, registration, payment of fees through online mode without going to the office of the any offices, because when there is a human interface, corruption takes place. So to do away with all this, the format of use of information technology was created. Then the single window system, that to move from this office to that office to have different license, registration or other remedy to sort out the industrial grievances, the single window system was also created. There are two issues. Without criticizing anything, I understand I can speak as freely as I can. Is that right, or I should restrict
Yes, yes.
on certain counts?
No,
I'm
no.
asking you, madam.
No, feel free.
Okay. Point is, when the there was one study we raised somewhere in 2002, that suppose you open an industry, then as many as 42 different departments will come and ask you this thing, labor, boiler, and in all 42 roughly, depends on the product. Suppose you use the disinfectant alcohols, then excise department will also come and grill these are the records. And so this was the study raised. So we came out with voluntarily self-certification scheme,
Right.
which we have legalized in 2015 December. Now that's an example. You as an industry give a simple undertaking that I run this industry, my address is this, and I will comply these laws applicable to my industry. This is simple undertaking. You need to give to the office, and office will give you the certificate with the 3-line emblem duly signed by labor commissioner that your industry is exempted for 5 years. No inspector will come to your place.
Right.
Now this was a voluntary scheme. We market different districts which are industrially developed to see that what best we can do to support the industry and diluting the inspector and consequences due to the repeated inspection and so on. It was a very poor response.
Correct.
Now, why this was a poor response, in spite of having things are so transparent, undertaking cannot come into the way, because even if you are supposed to comply the labor laws applicable to your industry, whether you give undertaking or you do not give undertaking. I am not supposed to give the undertaking to RTO that I will not drive my 4-wheeler on the wrong side. I am not supposed to.
Right.
So this undertaking was just a face off. It was a document that we used to generate before giving the blank check for 5 years that nobody will come to your place for routine inspection. But the scheme, Gujarat was only a state which came out with revolutionary amendment. During that phase, and across the country there was a severe inspection, but scheme failed. It was a very weak registration, and as present in Gujarat there are about 42,000 plus registered factories. It was hardly 200 plus enrolled into those schemes. I'm talking of 2003-4. Now B.V. Giri National Labour Institute, which is under the ambit of Ministry of Labour, Government of India, has studied that why this kind of scheme have failed. The resultant outcome was, first, the retainers of the company, they mislead the entrepreneurs that no, you should not join this scheme, because all retainers are banking on annual
fees,
subscription from the employer,
the consultants.
So if they sign this, consultants.
Yes.
So that's one. Second, the inspecting device, that is the officers of the respective department, they also used to tell no, you should not do this. If you don't interact, then you will not get any chance to update yourself and like to deliberate much on it. So that was the second reason. This is all tested study. And third was, employers were having no awareness on the subject. Whatever the retainer, consultant or the inspecting device used to percolate, they used to say, okay, no, go ahead with whatever all practices are, and so on. So the whole transparent amendment was derailed. Rather, it could not work the way in which it was expected to work. So that is, then the lot of new things have started, to check and balance the moral of the inspecting device. Like, we have launched mobile application on real-time basis. Suppose the cutting-edge level officer goes to some industrial area, he has to upload whatever his findings are within 24 hours, and that whatever he uploads can employer as well as his higher officer can see that. But in our country, if I used to speak this, what I'm going to say now in the law forum, there are two sets of scholars rather are actively working, and they're a scholar of a certain level. One scholar set used to are fully engaged in articulating the legislature, whatever of its kind, as tight as possible. And second is always working from where I can search the loopholes. So this is two constant, research to make a strong law and should search the window or a loophole to do away with this kind of things. And both are equally scholar, well-read, literate, and so on. So now what is happening in the Indian judiciary over a period of time. It is everybody is fairly aware about. I would not like to speak on it. The point I'm just trying to say is that use of technology is being, government is doing to combat the challenge. But you said second thing about the too much casualization of the workers. Now, answering that thing again, I'll go back to 2003. Gujarat was only a state where we came out with an amendment. Try to catch me carefully, all of my friends. We were only the state in the country to, amend the law, that is Industrial Dispute Act, where we have removed the term retrenchment from the definition of industrial dispute for the units or industries located in special economic zone. Right? So if I'm retrenched, if I'm employee of special economic zone, and if you remove me, I have no right to agitate the issue before any machinery.
Right.
The very purpose was, in export zone, orders are inconsistent. Honestly, I had worked in one multinational prior to being in a government job, incidentally, or maybe accidentally. But in that multinational unit, I have seen that for 8 to 9 months, there was no work, as there were no export orders. Now, I was heading the quality control department in pharma industry, and which is the must needed approved chemist in the industry to run the industry. So probably they were helpless not to throw me out. I put that way. But the working class, we have no choice but to throw them out. Because imagine a situation that an employer is paying 100, 200, 300 workers for no work for 8, 9, 10, 12 months. How he can survive? So to accommodate those issues, the amendment was made in special economic zone. However, to strike a balance, the retractment compensation, which I said 15 days, was raised to 60 days, so that worker can financially rehabilitate. But that was we did. But while I'm asking, I'm referring to your question about the too much casual nature of work and contractualization of workers specific to given state. If I speak of Gujarat, it's a matter of fact. There is hue and cry that there is no employment in Gujarat. Employees, scope of employment is reduced, etc., etc. Very truly speaking, I'm not talking from the side of government at all. I'm just talking more as a scholar and researcher in the subject. You must have read in print media, electronic media, and even State High Court and Apex Court also had stepped in regarding the plight of the migrant worker. In Gujarat, we have transported about 20 lakhs plus migrant worker to their native state during last few months. It's everybody knows that. Now these 20 lakhs migrant workers have taken away the job of local workers. I just equate that way. Now, why it is happening so? Why it is happening so? Because Gujarati workers are not interested or tend to work in the nature of work which is of hard nature. You will never find a Gujarati worker in steel rolling mills or foundries or power loom process house and similar kind of industry. By genesis itself, they are not inclined to work in those industries. So their jobs are being taken away by migrant workers. People tend to migrate in search of livelihood, and that is why they are here, being we are industrially developed state. So that is the reason that the how the contractual nature of system has started over a period of time. Second thing, there is one, way back one, putting other way around, but on merits, we had one debate competition of School of Social Science and some other students at my job security is removed. Now, try to catch me. If job security is removed, 100% employment can be achieved was the subject, and two participants, one in favor of the subject, one against the subject, needs to speak in a group, was the nucleus point of that event. This is what I am talking about of 2000 to assess this. My point is, one fact you cannot dispute, that if you want to remove a worker, it's very difficult situation in industry. He can take you till Supreme Court of India. Yes, you can, being a capitalist, hire a lawyer to your choice, but this too much protectionism, country has passed through different kind of trade union movement. Frankly speaking, if I speak about the collapse of textile industry in Ahmedabad, it was, union was behaving like a parallel.
I think there is some connectivity problem at your end.
Administration.
We lost it.
One should not. Okay. Now I was just trying to speak about why the textile industry collapsed in Ahmedabad, because of the excessive trade union movement, and they were behaving like a parallel administration. I used to say father is a father and son is the son, and one needs to maintain the dignity of the master servant relationship, which was probably lost. Second thing, what has happened, that employer also failed to modernize the technology, and they just continue with the old technology, was another reason that why the textile industry collapsed. But the same thing applies to all other industry. So the country has passed through different phase of trade union movement, and without criticizing, today we have lost the trade union movement in the country, because in absence of any leader who is really, working in the interest of the workers, I don't find anything, as I've been attending, rather I had attended ECL, which has emerged. So anyway, nothing but to hire and fire kind of thing by way of creating mediator agency and so on. Because if trade unions are so actively working really, they should have pleaded before the apex board to scrap certain labor laws like Contract Labor Act itself. Is, if I have to answer a question, it provides a platform for the best exploitation. But that act needs to be abolished, and that is the tripartite forum, the third partner, that is a union, which is missing from the surface, and that is why this kind of situation has arisen, and everybody is taking advantage of it. Yeah.
So we have already reached our time limit, but I see one hand raised. So I'm going to request the participant whose screen name you can see, Ransar. And there is a raised hand against his name. I would request him to raise one question, and after that we will call this meeting to the end.
Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. Your question.
I think it's on a mute.
We can't hear you. Okay.
Now you can hear?
Yes, yes.
Now?
Yes.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
My question.
Under the suppose there are 10 workers. They are working in the contract. Can they form union, sir?
Pardon?
Suppose
Can you repeat?
I-
Can you repeat? Can, will you please repeat the question?
yes, I am repeating. In a factory, there are 10 workers, and when they are working, they have completed maybe 1 year. Can they form a union? Can they form a union?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, they can
Under
form
the
a
idea.
union. You see,
What
there
is,
is,
yeah,
yeah, the Trade Union Act 1926 provides for the registration of the trade union. But if there are 10 workers, you know, the minimum membership of 10 and above is the law provides for. For the registration of trade union under the provisions of the Trade Union Act 1926 is amended in September 2009. So, if you see, the Trade Union Act is based on the Article 19 of the Constitution, that right to form the association. So they can form the union. Pardon?
they are contractual workers.
Contractual workers also, you see, under the Factories Act, if you look to the definition of the worker, any worker working in the premises is the worker, be it a contractual, casual, whatever nomenclature you give, is a worker. And reading with Article 19 and the provisions of the Trade Union Act 19, you can form the union, right?
Yeah. Madam, thanks a lot. Actually, I have many set of questions, but the time doesn't permit. Maybe we can have another session.
Yes,
if you can.
Yeah, we will collect the questions once again, and once we have the questions, request, and Dr. Bakshi has been kind enough, you know, he has said that we can draw from his expertise in future.
Yes. Yeah.
On behalf of everybody on this course, as well as the participants, Dharmang sir, I thank you once again, and today was really a time well spent where we could understand, you know, many details that normally we would overlook. So it was very useful for me as well as my participants to have spent this last 1 hour with you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And I see now a few participants joined, and now even fewer remain, but those who remain, I thank them for joining, and see you soon. Have a nice week, and goodbye.